AOC was asked about Israel-Gaza, and here's her answer. Listen to this.
Some of your colleagues, and we talked about what's happened at the protests this week, have called the president Genocide Joe. Some of your colleagues have accused the president of supporting genocide, including Rashida Tlaib. Do you agree with that word, genocide, that the president's been supporting a genocide, or does that go too far?
I think what we are seeing right now throughout the country is that young people are appalled at the violence and the indiscriminate loss of life. We are not just seeing 25,000 people that have died in Gaza. We are seeing the starvation of millions of people, the displacement of over 2 million Gazans. We have South Africa that has mounted a court in the ICJ. The ICJ ruled this week that Israel has a grave responsibility to prevent genocide.
But they're still determining whether it's a genocide. Do you think that
they are still determining
given
it?
That it's still under investigation?
I believe that they're still determining it, but in the interim ruling, the fact that they said there's a responsibility to prevent it, the fact that this word is even in play, the fact that this word is even in our discourse, I think demonstrates the mass inhumanity that Gazans are facing. And so whether you are an individual that believes this is a genocide, which, by the way, in our polling, we are seeing large amounts of Americans concerned specifically with that word. So I don't think that it is something to completely toss someone out of our public discourse for using. But I think what we are seeing here is that the Netanyahu government...
Oh, so you should... So no, so she won't say it's a genocide, but she will say you shouldn't toss somebody out of our discourse if they do call it a genocide. Whoa.
Wow. Knock down house.
Wow. That,
so some bold words.
So she's going to, by the way, AOC, you're going to get primaried by AIPAC anyway, but she's still half-assing her stand on Israel-Gaza.
You're already out, sweetie.
You're already out. They're already coming for you, okay? So her biggest lapdog is this guy, Ryan Grimm, right? He works for that billionaire PRO intermediary, and that's why he can't tell you the truth about Russiagate. He can't tell you the truth about Ukraine. But he can tell you the truth about Gaza for some reason, right?
Well, you got to get the right billionaire with the right interest.
You got to get the right billionaire. He got him. And he's also a very proud member of Broken Points, which that's my funny name for them. They're called Breaking Points. Anyway, with Bernie tied up in knots over the word ceasefire, this was a moment for AOC could have emerged as the undisputed leader of the left wing of the party. First of all, come on, we all know who the undisputed leader of the left wing of the party is. That's Cenk's nephew. Anyway. He says this was a moment AOC could have emerged as the undisputed leader of the left wing of the party. That's not the role she's playing here. So he's official. So this guy who's been lying for her at the top of his lungs for years now looks like he's turned a corner and is turning against AOC. Wow. That is isn't that something? So here, but I want to remind you who this guy is, Ryan Grimm. By the way, he goes with the cartoon picture of himself, which is very smart.
And I got to say, although he may be waking up a little bit in that tweet, it really shows how out of touch he is, that he thinks she's even in a position where with one gesture, she would emerge as the leader of the left, as if she hasn't destroyed all the goodwill that she had with the left at one time.
So remember when AOC ran for office the first time, she said she wanted to get a vote for Medicare for all on the House floor and that she would oppose Nancy Pelosi as speaker. So when I asked her to do that, she wouldn't. Oh, by the way, this guy says when it's so obvious, even Ryan Grimm can see it. So that's so now even everybody knows who Ryan Grimm is now, right? He's a lapdog to power. He's a propagandist. He's played by billionaires, 2 or 3 billionaires at the same time. And he a professional liar for the establishment, and he does it for Access and for other things, right? And he wrote this book. He's the author of The Squad. So his new book, which is an ass-kissing book to the Squad. That's why. So if you ass-kiss them and you run interference and you lie for them and you smear activists, which is what he's done. He's smeared Medicare for all advocates. He's all kinds of advocates and activists. He gets to write a book called The Squad that gets published and he gets access to them. But by the way, when he did his book signing, right? So when you do a book launch, you go to a bookstore. So he went to that bookstore in Washington, D.C. that everybody goes to, and he wouldn't take questions. They wouldn't.
Do you have to rewrite this book?
They didn't. So that's how you know he knows he's full of shit, because even at his own book signing, he wouldn't take questions. They had people write down their questions first, hand them in, and they still didn't read any of the questions. That's how bad it was. That's how bad his book tour is going, right? And by the way, at the front of the bookstore, this was at the front of the bookstore. Dr. Fauci
Insane.
with an American.
Insane.
This insane.
Can you just imagine the mind of someone who would pay money for that?
So
It looks like an iconic 90s horror movie
it does.
monster. Like
So-
Dr. Giggles.
So Ryan, so I just want to run you through the most recent Ryan Grimm when he lied for the squad. So when the squad voted to crush the railroad union, you remember they voted to crush them and end their strike. That's the only power you have as a union, is the power to strike. They took it away, and the squad voted in favor of the billionaires who ran the railroad and against the workers. And so Ryan Grimm was on with Brianna Joy Gray, who's friends with him, says it is commentators like yourself who, whenever the Democratic Party is within the crossfires of workers, justifiably, then those people are going to be protected, meaning he's going to protect the Democratic Party. So when the fire was against AOC and Jayapal, then suddenly AOC starts tweeting and you all start defending her. That's a quote from Shama Sawant, who was on a show with Brianna Joy Gray, and they were grilling him over defending the squad for crushing the railroad strike. And listen to what she has to say.
It was a
I'm sorry,
betrayal.
what the actual fuck are you saying?
So he's trying to pretend like the squad was actually on the side of the workers, and just Brianna and Shama Sawant said, "What in the fuck are you actually?" Let's listen to it again.
It was a
I'm sorry,
betrayal.
what the actual fuck are you saying? That those of us who are standing up for workers, we have the responsibility. You have the responsibility.
Yes, you have to find a
But
worker,
Ryan,
one worker.
You have the
They have to justify why it is that they voted to break a strike, knowing that they literally had zero to gain from it.
The workers felt they had something to gain from it. Maybe the workers don't want to be part of this fantasy play. Like the workers,
What
like
fantasy
actually
play?
what are you talking?
to get rid of the Railway Labor Act.
If socialists and progressive had voted only for a bill with paid sick leave, who in their right mind, who's on the side of the railroad workers, would be blaming them for that? This is complete nonsense.
The rank and file organizes inside BMWED. They push
Ryan,
this strategy.
You cannot.
And you're like, well, there's
cherry-pick.
some conservative, and you smear them as conservative. On what basis are you smearing these workers?
I do not appreciate you obscuring what I said.
So
And
that's how Ryan Grimm argues, right? He just lies, he obfuscates, he makes a real a friend of the worker like Shama Sawant and Brianna Joy Gray say, "What in the actual fuck are you talking about?" So that's him defending the squad as they voted to crush a railroad strike. And now we originally got introduced to Ryan Grimm during Forced to Vote. So what I said to him, so when he said this. So when he said,
And that's just so slimy, the way he throws in, you're smearing the railroad
Yeah,
workers.
so
As
what,
conservative. What? That's not a smear.
so when Ryan Grimm says that AOC could have emerged as the party leader, but that's not what she's doing, what I said to him was, "No, Ryan, this is where you say it's 4th down and 30. And if she tried leading on this, she'd risk being tackled in the backfield. So she did the smart play and decided to punt." Now, why did I make that joke? That's an inside joke for the people who watch this show. So why? Because during Forced to Vote, when we wanted the squad, AOC, to withhold her vote for Nancy Pelosi, do what Matt Gaetz did, and get some concessions for her vote for Nancy Pelosi as speaker, and they wouldn't do it. They asked for nothing, they got nothing. And secular. Oh, the Malibu Barbie, Kyle Kalinske said
Malibu Ken.
Malibu Ken. He
Easy
says
mistake.
these were some of the main points in favor of forcing a vote on Medicare for all during a pandemic. And this was when Kyle Kalinske still could think straight before he started taking Democratic donor money.
Yeah, those before Crystal stopped letting him pee standing up.
That's right. Before Chris, that's right. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a few reasons why why you want to force a vote. Sometimes it's to get members on the record so people can't make excuses later. Sometimes these votes create real political pressure that forces developments. Sometimes we vote for the historical record to let the future generations know we did. So Kyle Klinsky was tweeting this out. She said this before forced to vote, and now we're saying, well, what happened to this AOC?
Oh,
right?
Ryan said it. It's fourth down.
And so
third quarter.
This is what Ryan said. I'll show you. He said it's a tactic. Sometimes it's smart. Sometimes it's not. It depends on the circumstances. If it's third down and you need 1 yard, running might be a smart call. If it's 3rd and 30, running isn't the smart call. It is sadly not 3rd and 1 for Medicare for all.
Hey, it's not the time for Taylor Swift to break up with her boyfriend.
So here's what Justin Jackson, a real football player, said. He at the time he played for the LA. Why am I blanking on their name? The LA football team. Anyway, he says it's not 3rd and 30 either. It was 3rd and 30 when Bernie started running and hardly anyone supported the policy. It's actually 4th and 1 on the goal line, down 14 points in the fourth quarter, and they're kicking a field goal. How about you go for it and get us closer to the lead? So he comes in and ratios him like crazy, 2.5 thousand on his own thread.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you think a guy with helmet hair would know more about football?
You would think. So then Ryan Grin comes back with, they're worried if they go for it. Not only are they certain they won't make it, but they might be tackled in the backfield and turn it over on downs, leaving their movement worse. So that's the whole thing, is if you fight for something, it leaves you worse off than when you did. That's just crazy. There's no historical precedent for that. If you try to fight for something you want, that it pushes you back further. Justin says, I'm sorry, this is a horrible analogy and the type of thinking that gets coaches fired. You have to take risks, especially when the situation is advantageous. You're arguing for the field goal. The safe play actually increases your chances of losing the game, not vice versa. And then this doesn't stop here. He says, I'm not arguing for either play. I'm just saying that sometimes a play is right and sometimes the play under different circumstances is wrong. And so this is how he does it. So this is how he comes out.
Why are you talking if you're not arguing for either play? Why are you even weighing in then?
So this guy says that. He goes, for not arguing for anything, you sure have a whole lot of nothing to say. Underneath goes, Ryan, the journalist, providing cover for his favorite politician who just so happens to give the Intercept access. Or there are people who get paid off to sell the game out, like yourself. So people know that's what Ryan Grimm's is there. That's what he's doing. And it's like right out of a CIA cutout. You obfuscate, you get people distracted, you get them to talk about minutia, you get votes on. That's what he's doing. And so that's why it's so.
He's a grimfluencer.
He's a grimfluencer. And by the way, when the truckers were standing up against authoritarianism. Remember, the truckers in Canada were vaccinated at a higher rate than the general population in Canada. They weren't protesting medicine. They were protesting bullshit authoritarianism, and it turns out they were right. But everybody started to call them Nazis, including this guy, Ryan Grimm, and let's remember this. So Turncoat Don put this together. Jimmy Dore, whenever people get together to fight the oligarchy, Ryan Grimm is there to smear them. And here we go. Whenever people get together to fight against the oligarchy, Ryan Grimm, the DC bureau chief of the Intercept, is there to smear them and discredit them. He did it when people who were forced to vote. He did it to those people. He did it to people who were doing the Medicare for All marches. He did it to those people. And now watch what he's going to do to these people. He's going to try and smear the truckers and not talk about the issue at all. All he's going to do is say, you guys are right-wingers. Why should we listen to you? That's what he's going to do. Watch this. Of the trucker protests have linked it to kind of far right fringe movements, and your own network has been linked to far right fringe networks as well. I think you guys took a lot of criticism for very favorable coverage of the Unite the Right rally down in Charlottesville, which was an explicitly grotesque kind of white supremacist event. Why doesn't that give people a real sense of foreboding about where this movement does come from? He's saying that these truckers are smeared. They are now also white supremacists because this news agency covered Charlottesville in a positive way. So that now they're covering the truckers. So they're also. But Ryan, doesn't that make you a white supremacist and a right winger if you're interviewing this guy on your show? Platforming him. Why are you platforming white racists? Your own network has been linked to far right fringe networks as well. I think you guys took a lot of criticism for very favorable coverage of the Unite the Right rally down in Charlottesville, which was an explicitly grotesque kind of white supremacist event. Why doesn't that give people a real sense of foreboding about where this movement does come from? Okay, I'm going to answer Ryan's question. I wrote down the answer. The reason why it doesn't give people a sense of foreboding about where this movement is coming from, Ryan, is because it's very clear where it's coming from. And the corporate media has been able to suppress where it's coming from. And that's why you're now going to do your best to imply that it's just a bunch of secret Nazis. Oh, it's probably not the neoliberal authoritarianism hurts working people. No, they're probably just secret Nazis. Sure, they say it's about mandates, but I bet it's about racism, right, Ryan? I better ask the dumbest question in the world and then go home and cut my hair myself, because I'm Ryan Grimm.
By the way, I'd like to point out, at the time of recording this, this was way before literally the Canadian House of Commons gave a standing ovation to a Nazi.
To a literal Nazi.
Well, and let's not forget, very recently, and Schellenberger did an article about this. A Canadian court ruled that the invocation of the Emergency Powers Act was completely uncalled for.
A little bit Nazi-ish.
This whole narrative is totally unraveling now. They have their own versions of what we have, Hamilton 68 and NewsGuard.
That's right.
That ginned up this entire story based on nothing. And you have 4 people who are still in jail over this, probably falsely accused.
And so that is what I thought that was funny. I wanted to just kind of remind people who Ryan Grimm is, who works over at Breaking Points, and that he turned on AOC. That's the biggest lapdog for AOC possible. He went and kind of turned on her.
Well, you know why?
So that's why this is news. So when a shill, a corporate shill who gets paid by billionaires to lie about workers and lie to workers and lie about activists and smear activists and call people Nazis and white supremacists who are actual workers standing up to the oligarchy and the powerful, he's there to defend the powerful and to smear them. And I just think it's good to remind you, and that's why it's kind of interesting that he decided after his book got published that he could now tell a little bit of a truth about AOC.
No, what it is so now his book is kind of fucked because he's leaving all this big chunk of how the squad's disbanding very shortly. And so he's got to go with the guy that pays him more, which is that Pierre Omidyar.
Yes, right.
AOC don't pay him. That guy does. So
that's right.
That's why he would be going against the squad at this point.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. I got to tell you, this is sweet for me. This is very sweet for me because they can't stop revealing themselves. Kyle Kalinski's, Cenk Uygur's, Ryan Grimm's, Crystal Ball's. They can't stop revealing who they really are. Lapdogs to power, fucking there to bullshit you, obfuscate, and feed you propaganda. And there it is right there. Anything you'd like to add to this? I mean, you gave his book the Propaganda Award of the Year, didn't you?
That wasn't me.
Over at Do Dissidence.
Yes. But it was failed propaganda or bad propaganda?
Bad propaganda.
Well,
yeah.
it
was the bad propaganda of the year because I was like, I did not give that any kind of positive
in that book. I didn't read. I haven't read it yet.
It's It's all MSNBC 2.0. Like
these
people just they want to be the next generation of corporate media.
My girlfriend found it, and I was like, oh, that's a good quote. So when Hillary Clinton was running on her woman card or whatever, Bill Clinton apparently was going, Hillary couldn't sell pussy on a troop train.
Yeah,
I don't know what a troop train is, but that's pretty funny. Like, he's like, she's trying to do a woman angle. That was his. That's a juicy tidbit that.
Yeah.
If it was just that kind of shit, I'd go get it right now.
Yeah,
I just don't care about the squad.
Yeah. Him and Cenk Uygur released their squad book 3 years too late.
Oh, justice is coming
actually,
for the squad.
I haven't looked it up. My theory, I did a whole little video about this. My theory is that Cenk's running for president because nobody bought his book.
Nobody bought his book.
Well,
nobody.
He still has my vote,
it was like ranked. I looked it up. It was ranked somewhere around 86,000 in politics and news. I don't even know. I didn't know there were 86,000 folks in that subject. It was absolutely ridiculous.
I know more people read Nikki Haley's book.
Nobody was reading it, so I'm curious. Like, who the fuck would actually shell out money to read Ryan Grimm's book about the squad? I've got to look up the numbers.
I know it reminds me of buying like a Tiger Beat magazine.
When we're on a break, I'm gonna look up the ranking.
Hey, come see us do a live stand-up show. We'll be in Bend, Oregon, Portland, Seattle, Philadelphia, Avenel, New Jersey, Boston, Palm Springs, Stockholm, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, Berlin, and London. We're adding a second show in London. The first show sold out. See you there.